Black Waitress saved an old man's life not knowing. He was the father of a billionaire. What if a single moment of kindness could change two lives forever? On a rainy Tuesday evening in downtown Atlanta, 73-year-old Harold Peterson clutched his chest as sharp pain shot through his arm. The diner around him seemed to blur as his breathing became shallow and labored. He'd come here every week for the past 6 months, always sitting in the same corner booth, always ordering the same coffee and apple pie. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt final. As his vision darkened and his body began to slump forward, one voice cut through the haze. A young woman's voice, calm but urgent, calling for help. In that moment, Harold had no idea that the person rushing to his aid was about to become the bridge between his past regrets and his family's future. Sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the simplest acts of human compassion. Where are you watching from tonight? Jasmine Washington had been working double shifts at Murphy's Diner for 3 years, ever since her grandmother fell ill and needed round-the-clock care. At 34, she carried herself with the kind of quiet strength that comes from facing life's challenges head-on. Her regulars knew her warm smile and genuine interest in their stories, but few knew about the nursing degree she'd put on hold or the dreams she'd carefully folded away. Harold Peterson had become one of her favorite customers. Every Tuesday evening he'd shuffle in wearing his worn navy coat, order his usual, and sit quietly reading a dog-eared paperback. Sometimes she'd catch him staring out the window with such profound sadness that her heart ached for him. She'd learned he was a retired teacher, that his wife had passed 2 years ago, and that he lived alone in a small apartment across town. But there was something else about Harold, a weight he carried that went beyond grief. That particular Tuesday, Jasmine noticed Harold seemed more fragile than usual. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted his coffee cup, and he kept checking his watch nervously. When she refilled his cup, she asked gently, "Everything all right tonight, Mr. Harold?" He looked up at her with tired eyes and managed a weak smile. "Just thinking about my boy," he said quietly. "Haven't spoken to him in 15 years. Pride's a terrible thing, Jasmine. It builds walls that grow taller every day." She wanted to ask more, but the dinner rush began and she was pulled away to other tables. Harold had mentioned his son only once before, and the pain in his voice had been unmistakable. She'd sensed there was a story there, one filled with regret and stubborn hearts that refused to bend. As the evening wore on, Jasmine kept glancing toward Harold's booth. He'd barely touched his pie, and his usual calm demeanor seemed replaced by an anxious energy. Around 8:30, she noticed him fumbling in his coat pocket, pulling out an old photograph. Even from across the room, she could see his shoulders shaking slightly. The diner was nearly empty now, just Harold, an elderly couple sharing dessert, and a trucker reading his newspaper. The soft jazz playing overhead mixed with the gentle rain pattering against the windows, creating the kind of peaceful atmosphere that made people feel safe enough to remember things they'd rather forget. When Jasmine approached to ask if Harold needed anything, she found him staring at the photograph with tears in his eyes. It showed a young man in a graduation cap and gown, beaming with pride. "He looks just like you," she said softly, not wanting to intrude but unable to ignore his pain. Harold's voice cracked as he whispered, "He was so proud that day. I should have told him then how much I loved him, how sorry I was for being so hard on him growing up." The photograph trembled in Harold's weathered hands as he continued, "I let my own father's voice get in my head. All that nonsense about tough love and making men out of boys. Now my son thinks I never believed in him." Just as Jasmine was about to respond with words of comfort, Harold suddenly gasped, his face draining of color as he clutched his chest. "Call 911!" Jasmine shouted as she rushed to Harold's side. His breathing was ragged and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool evening air. The trucker immediately pulled out his phone while the elderly couple looked on in alarm. Jasmine knelt beside Harold's booth, her nursing training from years ago flooding back despite never having finished her degree. "Harold, stay with me," she said firmly, checking his pulse and noting the grayish tint to his skin. "Try to breathe slowly. I'm right here." She loosened his collar and elevated his legs using cushions from the booth. Her grandmother's medical episodes had taught her to stay calm under pressure, but seeing Harold in such distress stirred something protective in her heart. The photograph, Harold wheezed, his eyes frantically searching the floor where it had fallen. Jasmine spotted it near her feet and carefully placed it in his trembling hands. He needs to know. I'm proud of him, Harold managed between labored breaths. His name is Michael Peterson, lives in California. Big company. Never call him.
Of course.
The ambulance seemed to take forever. Jasmine held Harold's hand and kept talking to him, sharing memories about her grandmother, telling him about the nursing program she'd had to leave, anything to keep him conscious and focused. She noticed how his grip tightened whenever she mentioned family, as if her words were anchoring him to life. You know what I think, Harold? She said as sirens finally wailed in the distance. I think sons forgive easier than fathers do. I think your Michael has been waiting for that phone call just as much as you've been wanting to make it. Harold's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from the weight of years of silence. When the paramedics arrived, Jasmine quickly briefed them on Harold's symptoms and what she'd observed. As they worked to stabilize him, Harold grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. If something happens to me, he whispered urgently, tell my son. Tell him I kept every article about his company. Tell him I was wrong. His voice broke completely. Tell him his old man was just scared of admitting he'd made mistakes. The revelation hit Jasmine like a wave. She'd assumed Harold's son was just another working man, perhaps distant due to family disagreements. But keeping articles about a company suggested something bigger. Success that Harold had maybe resented or failed to acknowledge. As the paramedics prepared to load Harold onto the stretcher, he pressed the photograph into Jasmine's palm. Keep this safe, he pleaded. Promise me if I don't make it, you'll find him. Michael Peterson, Peterson Technologies. Tell him. His voice faded as the oxygen mask covered his face, but his eyes remained locked on hers, desperate and pleading. The ambulance doors slammed shut, leaving Jasmine standing in the rain outside Murphy's diner, clutching a stranger's most precious possession. She looked down at the photograph of the young graduate, noting the name Michael Peterson, MIT 1995, written on the back in faded ink. If this moment touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create ripples that reach farther than we ever imagine. That night, Jasmine couldn't sleep. Harold's words echoed in her mind as she sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, staring at the photograph under her desk lamp. Her grandmother, despite her illness, noticed her restlessness. What's weighing on your heart, baby? She asked from her wheelchair, her voice still carrying the wisdom that had guided Jasmine through every major decision of her life. Jasmine told her everything, about Harold's collapse, his desperate plea, and the weight of the promise she'd made. Peterson Technologies, she murmured, typing the name into her search browser. What appeared on her screen made her breath catch. Peterson Technologies wasn't just any company. It was a billion-dollar tech empire. And Michael Peterson wasn't just successful. He was one of the youngest billionaires in America. The articles painted a picture of a brilliant innovator who'd revolutionized green energy technology. But as Jasmine scrolled deeper, she found older pieces. Interviews where Michael mentioned his difficult childhood, his determination to prove himself, and his regret about his strained relationship with his father. In one particularly revealing interview from 3 years ago, Michael had said, "Success means nothing when the person whose approval you wanted most isn't there to share it with you." The irony was heartbreaking. Both father and son had been carrying the same pain, the same regret, separated by pride and the fear of reaching out first. Jasmine's grandmother wheeled closer, looking at the screen. "That young man's got his daddy's eyes," she observed quietly, "and they both got the same stubborn chin. Lord knows how many years they've wasted being too proud to say, 'I love you.'" When Jasmine called the hospital the next morning, she learned Harold was stable, but had suffered a significant heart attack. The nurse mentioned he'd been asking for the angel from the diner and wondering if she'd kept his photograph safe. Visiting hours wouldn't start until afternoon, but Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that time was precious. Not just for Harold's recovery, but for the reconciliation he desperately needed. She spent her morning researching everything she could about Michael Peterson. She discovered he lived in San Francisco, ran his company with the same meticulous attention to detail Harold showed in his crossword puzzles, and had recently donated $50 million to education, specifically to help underprivileged students finish their degree. The last detail hit close to home, reminding Jasmine of her own abandoned nursing dreams. But finding information and actually reaching someone of Michael's stature were entirely different challenges. His company's website listed only general contact information, and she imagined her calls would never make it past layers of assistance and security protocols. How could a waitress from Atlanta possibly reach one of America's most powerful business leaders? As she sat in her car outside the hospital that afternoon, Jasmine realized this wasn't just about Harold's dying wish anymore. This was about two people who loved each other but had forgotten how to say it. This was about the kind of healing that only comes when pride takes a backseat to love. Have you ever faced something like this? Having to bridge a gap between people you care about? Let us know in the comments how you've helped heal broken relationships. The photograph felt heavier in her hands as she walked toward the hospital entrance, knowing that inside lay a man whose heart was broken in more ways than one. Harold's face lit up when Jasmine entered his hospital room, though the oxygen tubes and heart monitors reminded them both how close he'd come to losing everything. "You kept it safe," he whispered, his voice stronger than the night before, as she placed the photograph on his bedside table. The afternoon light streaming through the window made the young Michael's smile seem even brighter. "Harold," Jasmine began gently, "I need to tell you something about your son." She'd rehearsed this moment all morning, knowing the shock could be overwhelming for someone in his condition. Peterson Technologies, Michael's company, it's incredible what he's built. But more importantly, he's never stopped loving you. She showed Harold the interview on her phone where Michael spoke about missing his father. Harold's eyes filled with tears as he listened to his son's voice for the first time in 15 years. "He sounds just like his mother," Harold whispered. "She always said he got her heart, but my stubbornness. I've been trying to reach him," Jasmine continued. "But I think this is something you need to do yourself. What if we called him together?" Harold's hand trembled as he considered the possibility. What if he hangs up? What if 15 years is too long? Jasmine sat on the edge of the hospital bed, her voice filled with the same gentle strength that had guided her through every challenge in her life. "Harold, yesterday you almost lost the chance to say anything at all. Your son is waiting for this call. He's been waiting 15 years for his father to tell him he's proud." With Jasmine's encouragement, Harold agreed to let her help him find Michael's direct contact information. She'd spent hours researching, finally discovering that Peterson Technologies had a special program for family emergencies that bypassed normal protocols, a system Michael had installed after reading about too many people missing final goodbyes due to corporate barriers. The phone rang 3 times before a warm voice answered. "This is Michael Peterson." The years melted away as Harold heard his son's voice, and Jasmine watched decades of pain transform into hope.
Of course.
"Michael." Harold's voice cracked. "This is your dad." The silence on the other end lasted only seconds, but it felt like eternity. Then came the sound of quiet crying, followed by words that healed 15 years of hurt in an instant. "Dad? Oh God, Dad, I've missed you so much." What followed was the most beautiful conversation Jasmine had ever witnessed. Father and son spoke through tears, sharing 15 years of milestones, regrets, and love that had never truly faded. Harold told Michael about keeping every article, about being proud but too afraid to reach out. Michael shared how every business success felt empty without his father's approval, how he'd driven past Harold Street countless times, but never found the courage to knock. "I'm flying out tonight," Michael said without hesitation. "Don't you dare go anywhere until I get there to hug you." Harold laughed through his tears, the sound filling the hospital room with pure joy. If you've been enjoying this story of love and reconciliation, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales of family, forgiveness, and the courage to reach out when it matters most. As they ended the call, Harold looked at Jasmine with profound gratitude. "You gave me back my son," he whispered. But Jasmine knew the truth. Love had never left. It had just been waiting for someone brave enough to build the bridge. 24 hours later, Jasmine arrived at the hospital to find Harold's room transformed. Fresh flowers filled every surface, and the steady beep of monitors had been replaced by the sound of quiet laughter. In the chair beside Harold's bed sat a tall man with his father's eyes and his father's stubborn chin. Michael Peterson looked exactly like the young graduate in the photograph, just weathered by years of success and longing.
Just relax,
"Jasmine,"
sir. I'm checking your pulse.
Harold's voice was
Everything
stronger
is going
now,
to be all right.
filled with
I'll be
life in a
fine.
way she'd never heard before. "I want you to meet my son." Michael stood immediately, extending his hand before thinking better of it and pulling her into a heartfelt embrace.
Michael,
"I can never thank you enough," he said, his voice thick with emotion.
it was all my fault.
"The doctor said if you hadn't acted so quickly, if you hadn't known what to do." He couldn't finish the sentence. Father and son had spent the night talking, sharing photographs on Michael's phone, catching up on 15 years of birthdays, holidays, and ordinary moments they'd missed. Harold learned that Michael had named his company Peterson Technologies, partly in hope that one day his father might be proud to share the name.
Of course.
Michael discovered that Harold had kept a scrapbook of every article about the company, hidden in his apartment, because he was too ashamed of his mistakes to reach out. "You know what the strangest part is?" Michael said to Jasmine. 3 months ago, I hired a private investigator to find my dad. I was finally ready to swallow my pride and apologize, but the investigator couldn't locate him. Dad had moved apartments twice since we last spoke. Harold smiled sheepishly. "I kept moving because I was afraid you might come looking, and I didn't want you to see how little I'd made of myself after your mother died." The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Both men had been reaching toward reconciliation, but it took Harold's heart attack and Jasmine's compassion to finally bring them together. As she watched them share stories and inside jokes, Jasmine felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond helping a customer. She'd witnessed the healing of a family. Before she left, Michael approached her privately. "My father told me about your nursing degree," he said quietly. "Peterson Technologies has a scholarship program for people who've had to put their education on hold for family reasons. I'd like to sponsor your return to school if you'll let me." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears as she realized that Harold's crisis hadn't just reunited a family. It had opened a door to her own dreams she'd thought was permanently closed. 6 months later, Jasmine received her nursing degree, graduating summa cum laude with Harold and Michael cheering from the front row. Harold, fully recovered and wearing a suit that Michael had insisted on buying, beamed with the pride of a grandfather watching his family grow. Sometimes the most extraordinary changes begin with the simplest choice: to care for a stranger, to answer when someone needs help, to believe that love is stronger than pride. If you enjoyed this story of second chances and unexpected connections, please remember to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales that remind us all of the power of human kindness. Thank you for joining us on Harold and Jasmine's journey. May their story inspire you to reach out to someone who needs to hear they're loved.